Hello, and welcome to New Story. This 100 denar banknote you're seeing is one of the most widely used banknotes in Macedonia. But what if I told you that this famous banknote may contain a historical mistake? And no, the mistake is not on the front of the banknote. It is connected to the image on the back. At first glance, it looks like just an old city scene, but once you take a closer look, you notice a small piece of text next to the image that explains what it is supposed to show. According to that description, this is an engraving of Skopje from 1594, seen through a window from an Albanian house. The National Bank of the Republic of North Macedonia also gives a very similar explanation for this image. It describes it as an engraving of Skopje from 1594, but attributes it to the famous Dutch engraver Jacobus Harabin, who is best known for the two engravings he made of the house of the famous artist Peter Paul Rubens. This is where the problem begins. Yes, the city shown in the image is indeed Skopje, but the engraving is credited to Harabin, yet he was baptized only in 1660, so it would have been impossible for him to create this engraving in 1594 as the banknote suggests. That raises an obvious question. If the description on the banknote is wrong, then what exactly is this image? When was it made? And where did it come from? That is exactly what we are going to explore in this video. This image on the banknote is an engraving of the city of Skopje, as I mentioned. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is an engraving? Simply put, it is a printmaking technique in which an image is carved into a metal plate using a burin or a similar tool. Ink then settles into those carved lines on the plate, and when the plate is pressed onto paper under high pressure, it creates a highly detailed print. In Western printmaking, engraving began to appear on paper in the second quarter of the 15th century and became more widespread across Europe by the mid-1400s. This is what the original engraving on the 100 Macedonian Denar looked like. City portraits like this became especially popular during the 16th and 17th centuries, when European printmakers began creating detailed panoramic views of towns and cities. Some of the most notable works from that period featured images just like this, but they were not just records of what a town or city looked like. They also reflected how people imagined these places. In the same way, this image is not just a record of Skopje, it is also an interpretation of it. You can spot familiar landmarks like the Kale fortress, the minarets, the old bazaar and the stone bridge. But alongside those real features, the engraving is filled with inaccuracies. The people, for example, are shown wearing clothing that had little to do with the region itself. Across the image, a ribbon flutters with the word Skopje, the name used here for Skopje. That same text also appears separately on the banknote itself, placed beside the image of the engraving. Then, along the bottom edge of the original image, there's another line of text, Skopje op de rivière Veretazar, which translates to Skopje on the river Veretazar. The name Veretazar here refers to the Vardar River, the river that runs through the city of Skopje. Now, this engraving doesn't carry Harabin's signature. Even so, its style and details closely match other engravings connected to Harabin, especially those from a work published in 1688, that also included 21 towns in the Balkans under Ottoman rule or suzerainty. Among them were places like Kustendil, Targovište and Bucharest. Skopje was identified in the series as the Roman numeral 15. This work was discovered in the print cabinet of the Romanian Academy, bound together with an illustrated war and city view album by Peters, which was published around the same time in Antwerp. Peters' album included engravings of scenes from the Ottoman siege of Vienna, portraits of Western European rulers, and views of cities and ports stretching from Central and Southeastern Europe all the way to the Levant. At first, historians believed Harrowin's engravings were simply part of that collection, but later research showed that they actually belonged to a separate work of their own. Even though we still don't know what exactly this work was originally meant for, its timing may offer some clues about its purpose. It was created in 1688, at the height of the war between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. At that moment, Habsburg forces were making major advances, most notably with the capture of Belgrade. In Vienna, the ruling elite believed that they were on the verge of a final victory, and they were already imagining the expansion of the empire into places like Serbia, Bulgaria, and the Romanian principalities. Seen in that context, some historians see Harrowin's work as more than just a collection of city views. They believe it may have been intended as a tribute to Habsburg power, showing not only towns already under Habsburg control, but also places the Habsburg hoped to claim next. In addition, some of Harrowin's city portraits were later republished in another work, this time with slight retouches though, as part of a collection celebrating Habsburg victories over the Ottomans. Whatever its original purpose may have been, one thing is clear. Harrowin never actually visited these cities and towns himself. Instead, he relied on second-hand accounts from travelers along with his own imagination, which explains why this engraving mixes real features with invented details. There is also one important detail to keep in mind about this engraving. In 1689, just a year after this work was published, Habsburg forces plundered and burned Skopje, which caused a fire that devastated much of the town and many of its landmarks. Because of that, this engraving is so valuable today. It is a rare work that shows Skopje before that destruction. When you put all of this together, it becomes clear that the description on the 100 Macedonian Denar banknote contains a historical mistake. The attribution and the date, 1594, simply do not match the historical timeline. And that is only part of the problem. The banknote also claims that the scene shows Skopje viewed through a window from an Albanian house. Yet, there is nothing in the image itself that clearly supports that idea. There is no obvious window, no visible interior, and no detail that confirms such a specific setting. So, while the engraving itself is a fascinating feature of this beautiful banknote, the way it is described raises more questions than answers. And sometimes, the most interesting thing about the banknote is not just what it shows, but what it gets wrong. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.